1. So here is some backstory. I, 31 male, was in Navy Aviation and used my GI Bill to get my A&P license. For those of you who don't know, FAA certification required to work on non-military aircraft. Small Air had a new boss, applied, got the job. Small operation, maybe 10 mechanics total. I grew up with an older crowd, so I typically get along great with people in their 60s. I've watched all the old shows, know their music, etc. They usually love me. Except for one guy. We'll call him Ray Ray. Well, Ray Ray was a grumpy stick in the mud. For some reason he hated me. Maybe because of my annoying personality. Mind you, if someone is uncomfortable with my jokes or anything, I am respectful and stop or keep it away from them, depending on what it is and what they ask. At the end of the day, I'm there to work. Nothing I do is dangerous or ridiculously offensive, but for those of you who know military guys, you know what I'm talking about. I get my work done, I do it correctly, I own up to my mistakes, and ask for help when I need it. Ray Ray never addressed me directly, but I could tell he wasn't my biggest fan, so I did my best to avoid him. Well, over the next 2 years, he made it his mission to nitpick and find reasons to complain to try to get me fired. Double-checking my work, not QA, to look for mistakes, re-inspecting things I signed off. I reported him to my supervisor and boss. Thanks for letting me know, I'll take care of it, just ignore him. Fun fact, they never did. Boss, old Marine, got along with him at first. In fact, during the interview, him and the supervisor explicitly informed me, Ray Ray is a grumpy old man and has a habit of finding a reason to hate someone then trying to get them fired. I appreciated their honesty and typically steered clear of Ray Ray, and when I had to interact with him I was professional. Boss seemed to brush off complaints from Ray Ray, which made me feel like he had my back. There was a guy a few years younger than me, let's call him Javier, but had been there longer. We became friends and he showed me how to do certain inspections. I specialize in electrical. Because of our speciality, we became the dynamic duo. We volunteered to go fix problems out in the heat and rain and would work through lunch break and get overtime until it was resolved. Then things with boss changed. Authorized overtime, yelled at me on the hangar floor for working too much. This happened 2 times during overtime season. Later, Javier and I had an issue that just wouldn't go away. Boss was no help, neither was supervisor. Boss suggested we contact the manufacturer. We did, got a recommendation and tried. Boss told us the manufacturer was stupid and just build the product, they don't fix it. Then told us that we wasted our time and shouldn't have bothered. He then gave us a suggestion. Javier and I tried to explain fluid laws and explained why his suggestion was not physically possible to have been the issue. He demanded we do it. Javier and I agreed to do it. We agreed with each other that if it worked, we would go apologize to boss and ask why he knew it would work. If not, we were clocking out and leaving. We ended up clocking out and leaving. Too much to include also happened. I had been applying elsewhere already, but hadn't heard back. One day, Javier and I were working on a plane with a required item, not due for inspection. Finally, close up the bird and get it ready to fly. We see that Ray Ray wrote up a bullcrap discrepancy. It didn't affect airworthiness, so we deleted the write-up, no big deal. Much drama followed, but ended up resulting in my firing a few days later, or so boss thought. He called me in and proceeded to lay out all the reasons I was fired. The main thing to take away from his side is that he told me that when Javier and I walked off the job, we should have quit, because we would be doing him an effing favor. I responded calmly, but not with professional language, that 1, I had reported Ray Ray for targeting me and nothing was ever done. 2, they warned me about him when they hired me, so they knew he was an issue and never did anything about it. 3, I always changed my behavior if I was asked, and tried my best to keep it away from those who didn't care for it. By the way, just Ray Ray. 4, a few more, but not important for the story. Boss realized that firing me could possibly give me legal recourse to do 1 and 2, then told me to get back to work. Not 5 minutes after I left his office, I got a call for a job. I accepted on the spot. I told Javier, aware of my conversation with boss, that I was going to do boss a favor. Screw him. I would grab my stuff over the weekend and come in to quit on Monday. The next day I realized that didn't work out logistically, so I packed my box, got a parts guy to load it in my truck with a forklift, and then went to drop it off at the new job. No 2 weeks, just packed my stuff and left. I texted Javier and told him I would be back to drop off my uniforms and airport baggage. He told me that I would have to give it to him in the parking lot because I wasn't allowed in the building or near the hangar anymore. Apparently, someone saw me leaving with my box and asked Boss, "Did OP quit?" I saw him take his box and leave. Boss came out to the hangar floor, absolutely enraged, cursing, saying he didn't want me back in the effing building, etc. Javier got in trouble for going through my box. For non-mechanics, this is a thing. Basically just making sure you aren't taking company property when you leave. He didn't care because he hated Boss and it was worth it to see him that angry. Parts guy got in trouble for using the forklift without asking Boss, but same thing. I dropped off my badge and uniform to Javier, who said that Boss locked himself in the office, then went home early. I thought that was the end of it, but then I hear from Javier that after my leaving, he keeps talking crap. So I inform Javier, Andy, Robbie, and Quentin about job openings at my new place. Quentin gets hired about 3 months later, and apparently Boss still has a hard-on for me. So now, every time there is an opening, I refer all my old co-workers. Hopefully I can poach every decent mechanic he has, making him look bad to his boss for the turnover during his time in his position. I've been at my new place for about 8 months, and I occasionally hear from old co-workers that Boss will bitch about me. Apparently I'm living rent-free in his head. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Quentin said that during his exit interview that he hated me, and that if he ever saw me in public he would knock me out. I pray that he does. Please, for the love of God, assault me in public, in front of witnesses. I would love the lawsuit. I, a 46-year-old woman, and my daughters, 17 and 15, have a strained relationship with my ex-husband's parents, 78 male and 80 female. My ex passed away in an accident last year, and we've had some major family dramas since, due to his cheating and him leaving 2 boys born with his affair partner orphaned. She also died. Part of the drama has been my ex-in-laws trying to get custody of my daughters, and them also trying to live with us. Hell no. First one we're going to court over. Second one will never happen. Where we live, there is a weekend market with fresh produce, eggs, meats, and other products straight from farmers. This week was extra special since it's my youngest's birthday. Since her party later this month, I decided to give her a budget and set her loose on the market to get whatever she wanted. Mostly chocolate and sweets. After an hour, I did start getting worried, and just before I called her, she called me. She was crying, saying some weird people have cornered her. I ran to her with my oldest daughter to find 6 older women berating my daughter for being unchristian, for refusing to spend time with her paternal grandparents, or for wanting to be a good big sister to her poor orphaned baby brothers. My daughters are the ones that found out about my ex cheating and the babies, so they aren't fond of the kids. It's trauma, and they're working with a therapist. I got between the group and my daughter, telling my eldest to go pay for the stuff her sister had and go to the car. Then I turned to the women, some of whom I knew when they went to my ex-in-law's church, and ripped them a new one. They told me I was the worst for refusing to obey my ex-in-laws, like a good Christian wife. Ugh. Eventually the screaming turned too loud, and we were all asked to leave the market. I met with my girls in the car, the women following me like a group of vultures. I managed to get in the car and drove away. After my girls went to bed, I got online to talk to another member of that church that I'm in good terms with. I told him about what happened, and after he apologized, he told me what was going on. My ex-mother-in-law posted this massive story in the church's Facebook group about how horrible my daughters and I are, how we're leaving them homeless and penniless. They inherited my ex's personal bank account and his life insurance, and how my daughters didn't even talk to them. She also accused us of being the reasons she lost her grandsons. The boys are now living with distant relatives of my ex-husband. Basically, it was a sob story worthy of a Hallmark movie. And of course, they were getting all the love and support from the more extremist members of their church. This church and its members are a bit annoying, especially with LGBTQ+ topics. But they have a small saving grace. They are incredibly strict about cheating. It's a big no-no, be it from a husband or a wife equally. Now, how did she get around blaming me about affair children without exposing the cheating? She claimed the other woman was our surrogate since I was unable to have more children. They said I didn't want the babies because they were boys, which is absolutely disgusting to be accused of. Well, I decided it was time to clean up this mess, and since I was mid-divorce when my ex died, I had all the evidence needed. And since the divorce wasn't completed, I don't have any legal ramification for releasing all the evidence. I was off the next day and went to a print shop to get copies of all the delightful pictures of my ex cheating, his text conversations with his affair partner, the ones with his parents confessing to his cheating and getting support from them, my ex-in-laws harassing me about the divorce, and the coup de grace, all the emails and text messages of them bullying my daughters about their baby brothers. In one of them, they called my daughters bastards, telling them it was their fault their father died, since they told me about the affair and I began the divorce. This one was literally 2 days after my ex died. I paid extra for all of this to be printed in beautiful, high-quality paper. Then when I got home, I sat down for hours to make delightfully personalized binders. They look like the little prayer song packets the church give for everyone to take to sing hymns. The first picture, when opening the binders, is my ex and his side woman making out in our living room. Their faces are easy to discern, and the girl looks nothing like me. Different skin tones and hair color. Underneath I wrote ex-husband's name and affair girl's name. Love story. I took them to the church before service. There's a desk in the back with the songbooks for people that need or forget their own. That's unchristian. And they never check them. The gossip mill was quick and harsh. The names my ex and his affair partner got called in the Facebook were so bad, the pastor himself had to get involved just to keep things relatively PG-13. People were angry at my ex-in-laws for their abuse to my daughters. But what made me laugh was that I was still in the wrong for the divorce. But it is understandable that I failed on my duties after the shock, and I possibly will one day return to the light. Unlike my cheating husband and his Jezebel. They used another word I can't use here, I imagine. Whore. I got 2 apology letters in the mail for my girl and an invitation to join the church for support. Hell no! As for my in-laws, they got shamed into leaving the church. I understand the Satanic Temple will take anyone. My ex-mother-in-law made a post on her wall about how alienated she feels and how no one cares for the elderly anymore. How she wished her great son was still alive since he would take care of her and her husband. With what money? I don't know, since I was the breadwinner. Explanation of the will. My ex-husband had a will that named his parents as beneficiaries. As far as I was aware, he had told me that he named our daughters, not them. I never pushed for me to be the beneficiary, as my own will has my daughters as the beneficiaries, not him. 3. So quick context. Some friends and I started a small tech company that tries to help people with data privacy and prevent their exposure in data leaks. Let me be the first to say that I think the tech industry as a whole doesn't deserve much credit. There's a lot in the world today that's worse than it was 30 years ago, because of how big tech has invaded our lives. This isn't a glorification of the industry or of startups or the venture capital fundraising world of it all. I'm in the middle of it, and I hate it. And we're just a modest company that's trying to stop bigger tech giants like Google and Facebook from making cash on our private data. So anyway, Maybe it goes without saying that some of my least favorite work has been dealing with big venture capital firms, who couldn't care less about the lives of the people on my team. Well, I'm just trying to get us a reasonable position where I can offer desirable employment to our staff and genuine value to the people whose data we're trying to help protect. Anyway, as a company, we're doing okay today. But this story took place a couple of years ago, as we were starting to get on our feet. I won't bore you with the details of how small tech companies get started financially, but back then we were just 3 people. We'd gotten some initial investment from folks we liked, who cared about our goals, and who supported our decisions. We grew a bit and had some success, and were looking for what would hopefully be a final fundraise, after which we'd be self-reliant on our own revenue to keep the lights on and grow as we needed. Here's where the troublemakers came in. This new fundraise round went well, and we ended up having a successful close with a VC firm. Let's call them X Ventures. We didn't need much from them. We had decent revenue already, and more importantly, everyone else agreed to a clear plan from the beginning. They would provide a small amount of capital, and then in about half a year's time we'd do one last small fundraise, round extension. And hopefully that would be it. A minor detail at the time, but important to the story. Although we never wrote it into the contract, we agreed that when we did the round extension, we wouldn't re-audit our company's valuation. Which is to say, we let these possible new investors come in based on the valuation we'd just completed of the company's worth. At first, X Ventures played along and things were fine. But as the extension round approached, they started acting differently. Chiefly, they pushed for a new valuation despite earlier agreements that there wouldn't be one, for the single and annoying reason that a new higher valuation would pad their own returns and their own pockets. The problem? Not only would that move likely scare off new investors, but it would force us as a company into a harsher, steeper revenue roadmap just to justify our valuation numbers moving forward. This new valuation didn't serve anyone, not the company, not my employees, nobody. All that it served was the greed of the X Ventures investors. Tensions grew, and X Ventures board members started dragging their feet. They skipped meetings, dodged calls, and refused to sign off on any paperwork that advanced the deal. They picked fights about uncontroversial decisions and played devil's advocate around the silliest details. Their goal, though, was clear: to stall and maybe kill the entire process. I saw what was happening. All I have to say, for the egos these venture capital folks walk around with, it's wild to see some of them act more like children than any colleague or employee I've ever worked with. What's more, once as I was walking out of the office, I overheard one of these problem investors on the phone with another one saying, "I know we don't have many good arguments here, but if they don't get our signatures on these critical terms, they can't proceed without us. We still have control here." I can't tell you how much this ticked me off. We're a small company looking to run on slim but genuine margins, and they're trying to play with the livelihoods of every employee here, just so they can edge out a larger portion of the pie than they were already guaranteed. Anyway, I hatched a plan. It wasn't as if they were throwing a fit about every signature, just the ones critical to the process of closing the round. So, with the support and even enthusiasm of the company's lawyers, I quietly inserted a clause into an otherwise insignificant fundraise document that was set to be signed by all parties. The clause stated that if any board member was required to sign future documents and failed to either A, actually sign, or B, express their rejection of the agreement terms by the signature deadline, then I would have a kind of power of attorney authority to sign on their behalf. The clause was subtle, buried in boilerplate, and given X Ventures' recent strategy of being less involved than they ought to be, the document was signed by everyone without complaint. I should note that many good folks on the board who care about the company and pay attention to its details noticed this clause and reached out to me about it. I didn't try to hide my intentions from them at all, and when I told them why it was there, they were delighted by it. Sure enough, when the final terms of the extension were sent out, terms that were fair to all parties and terms that nobody, X-Ventures in particular, could raise any valid objection to, they had a last-minute tantrum and figured they could kill the deal by just once again not signing the documents that had been sent to them. They ignored emails, missed meetings, let deadlines slip, and, at the absolute last moment of the day when the document could be signed, one of these folks called me with a smug, "Looks like we missed the deadline. Guess we'll have to renegotiate." Except no, because per the agreement they had already signed, I had full authority to sign for them, and I did. The deal was closed, we got funded, and X-Ventures, despite their tantrums, had played themselves. 4. I'm in college, and studying for my extended diploma in art and design. I have a teacher this year who is all about conceptual art and has never drawn a day in her life. To keep this short, I will just list the things she has done before. Told me that my drawings are just copies and not real art. Told me that anime isn't art and that I need to be more realistic. Told my class to use AI art. Told me that my portfolio for university was not enough for me and to remove some of my best work. To put it lightly, this woman gets on my nerves. We are doing an industry-linked project with a local business during our practice project before our final major. She has arranged a visit for the head of the company to come and see our work as we were in lesson. She spent 3/4 of an hour looking at 2 people's work in specific. There are 9 of us in that class, and then eventually came over to me and my friends. We all specialize in character creation and concept art, looking at a lot of different animation and cartoons and using those styles. She brought this woman over and said, "These are our character creators. They all really like anime, but we're trying to get them to move away from that and look at some real art." We were shocked that she would just discredit our work in front of the woman who employed us to do work for her business. I am now in our final project. She had told me multiple times in our previous project that you can't just do research on things you like, you need to broaden your research. So I decided to do just that. I made an entire research page on conceptual art, and went into detail discussing an artist's themes, and exploring the style of her work and saying how to me it doesn't make sense, and that I don't have the same love for it as it seems illogical. I used a lot of points to back up my views, and made sure that she couldn't turn it against me. We are also being taken on a trip to a conceptual art gallery that I will be doing the exact same with. She spent the first half of this year discrediting all my hard work and style, so now I will discredit hers. She has seen the research page, but didn't even bother to properly read it. But she said how she likes it I've put myself more open to look at different artists. She had seen how I spoken about it in her brief look over my work and quickly moved on to the next table, completely forgetting to look at the others' work in my table, but they didn't care and didn't want to talk to her anyway. I hope she knows how much we all don't like her way of teaching. 5. About 20 years ago, I used to work as an office assistant at a small company where we would receive orders from clients and then we would assign the work to one of our freelancers, who were well-compensated and respectable professionals. My boss was such a professional herself, and when possible, we would assign that work to her. I accepted the minimum wage job because she told me I could sometimes get tasks assigned as a freelancer, with the nice freelancer compensation, that she would personally train me and that in less than a year, I would most likely be promoted to a regular freelancer and make very good money. This sounded like a great career path to my young and naive ears. One of the things she had told me in the very beginning was that when you take over an order, you become like a project manager for that order. You need to make sure that the freelancer would finish the work on time, as the work was usually time-sensitive. Additionally, she loved going on long lectures about how she is paying me, minimum wage, for me to use my brain and figure things out when necessary. These lectures were mainly a vehicle for her to stroke her own ego by explaining to her employees how our brains were not as smart as hers. One day, our biggest corporate client had placed a large order that was due on a Monday by noon, and we had assigned the task to my boss to do over the weekend. It was Monday morning. Time was ticking away and my boss hadn't arrived at the office. The client had called to see if we were going to provide the work soon, as it was urgent. I tried calling my boss, who didn't pick up her mobile. I called half an hour later and texted her. No answer or reply while noon was fast approaching. So I called her landline at home. Her husband picked up, told me she wasn't home, and I explained very briefly why I was trying to get a hold of her. Less than an hour before noon, my boss called furious that I had been so insistent on getting a hold of her, and that I had created a state of stress and emergency at her house. Her home number was for emergencies only, and this wasn't an emergency. It's not professional to call people when they're not at work. She told me she'd got everything under control, and she was now sending the work to the client directly. When she arrived at the office, she gave me a big scolding in person, and told me that I do need to hound other freelancers, but not her. It was her business, and she got everything handled. She knew all the clients, and there were clients because of her. She looked me in the eye and told me, "If I take over a task, it's not your task anymore. It's my task. You don't need to bother me with reminders. You just give me the instructions from the client and I'll handle everything myself. From that point on, your job is done. I never miss deadlines. If the client calls, you tell them I'm on it, and you don't call me or text me about it." Fair enough. I apologized for the stress and repeated the new instructions back to her for confirmation. She was very happy with that, and confirmed I had understood everything. She once more gave me her favorite lecture about how she is paying me, minimum wage, for me to use my brain, with a lot of condescending examples of how she always uses her brain, unlike us normal workers. I could only nod along, as if her narcissistic rant was actually teaching anybody anything. About a month or so later, another client came in with an order. I accepted it. My boss was available to handle it, so I forwarded everything to her, and I considered my work in regard to that order done as instructed. On the day of the deadline, I was on vacation and was hiking in a remote area with spotty cell coverage. The other office assistant called me and told me the client had called the office to check if the work was ready. I told my colleague that our boss was on it, and that we didn't need to worry as our boss was going to handle it, and that my clear instructions were to tell the client our boss was personally on it. The task would be done by the deadline, and explicitly not to call our boss to remind her of the deadline. Then, since I was on vacation, I needed to conserve my battery, and everything at the office was handled. I switched off my phone. An approaching deadline that my boss had to meet was explicitly not an emergency. Also, I had recently realized that my boss had misled me about the career opportunities this job was affording me, so I wasn't going to be on call on my rare day off. While I was hiking without a care in the world, my boss had managed to forget about the deadline. By the time she realized she had missed it, the office was closed. My boss had urgently finished the work, but it turned out she didn't know the clients so well, as she didn't have their contact details. As the order was in the office and my phone was off, she had to go there herself, fetch it, and use the contact details to deliver the work late. This was particularly embarrassing as my colleague had informed the client our boss was personally doing the work for them. When I came back to work, it was pandemonium. She screamed at me, but I simply pointed out that everything I had done was following her instructions. "Why did you do this?" "You told me to." "Why didn't you do that?" "You told me not to." She was fuming, but she knew I was correct, and I had acted exactly as instructed. She also screamed at me for my phone being off, but I said I needed to conserve my battery for emergencies, and this was clearly not an emergency at all. And I'm not on call while on vacation anyway. Malicious compliance for the win, right? Well, narcissists never accept blame, and she had an idea how to shift the blame to me after all. "But you didn't provide me with the client's contact details with the order assignment. How could I have delivered them the work? It's your fault for not providing me with all the information." I pointed out that she had told me she knew all the contacts personally, but if she had used her brain like she's constantly telling us to, she could have easily noticed that the order instructions were on the client's letterhead, with all their contact details spelled out, on every single page, bottom and top. Now, that was a huge slap to her fragile ego, and remembering her face in that moment still makes me smile. Needless to say, I was fired. Of course, I don't mind. Don't you just love happy endings? Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge's Ice Cream, episode 407. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so you can get these videos in your subscriptions feed. In theory, it's meant to work that way, but it doesn't always work that way. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can sign up for my Patreon page, which is linked for you in the description. You'll also find a link to my merchandise store for you over on Teespring, and you can leave a tip by clicking on the heart with a $sign underneath the video. Okay, no more business today, so let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: when you go to a website and it has a choice between light and dark, sometimes they'll have more options. Are you a light mode user? And if so, how long have you been a sociopath? But no, seriously though, do you prefer the light or the dark mode when you go to websites? Personally, it's always the dark mode for me. I was so grateful when Wikipedia introduced one, and I'm mentioning this now because Discord, we have a Hellfreezer Discord. There might be a link in the description, I can't remember. It's in some videos, it's not in others. But they introduced a full dark mode, and Discord was never that hard in the eyes for me because it was always kind of like grey. But now it's full dark and it looks very, 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 very nice. The only other thing they could do would be let me change the text color, but you know what, I'm not going to push for that one. It's just, it'd be nice, but I'm very happy with a full dark mode. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And this one comes from Revenge's Ice Cream 405, and it was, the question was, how long does it take you to realize when the year has changed for you? Today's answer comes from Josie. When the autumn weather kicks in, I'm Australian, and our summers are horribly hot. I hate it with a passion. It's technically autumn now, but it just doesn't feel like it yet. We're getting close, though. Thank you very much for your answer, Josie. I have noticed we're starting to get a little bit, it's not really warm, it's not, I don't think it's even double digits today, I'm not even sure, but it's been consistently above, out of the minuses consistently for a while, so it feels more warm than it has, which is nice because I realized, I haven't had the space heater on for the past few days, which is nice. It also probably means now that I don't really need to use it as much, they'll fix my gas and get it working properly. I was pretty sure that was going to happen. God forbid they had it done during the winter months. Anyway. Now that it is getting a little bit warmer, you bet your bippy there's a tub of ice cream in my freezer. I can't get Ben & Jerry's fish food anymore, but I did find a knockoff in the local Lidl. I think it's called Fantastic Fish. There's a little chocolate fish and stuff in it. It's very nice. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.